so there was nothing like this in the history of technology ever. Nothing decreased so quickly, so much for so many years. And I think what that means is that AI will be basically everywhere. I normally say, where there's money, there's fraud. But now I also say, where there's a decision, there is AI.
Money makes a world go round. It makes a world go round. Money makes a world go round.
Welcome to The Laundry, the podcast connecting AML, compliance, and financial crime to the real world. Through this show, as well as conversations at events and with clients, we are lucky enough to speak with true experts, people who are in financial crime and compliance every day. But when the conversation turns to AI, we can often hear the same story. We tried it, but it didn't stick. Maybe we've played with tools in their own time, or their firm has set up a task force with pending results. Here's the reality. The AI you tested 18 months ago is a relic compared to what is available today. It's smarter, it's more reliable, and now it's become an essential. I'm your host, Marit, CEO of Strise, and in this episode, we are asking what is at the cutting edge of AI in financial crime prevention. We'll be discussing the next wave of AI innovation in financial crime, the growing threats and challenges facing the industry, and how we overcome the skepticism that still holds so many institutions back. And to dive into this topic, I'm joined by a genuine pioneer in this space, Pedro Bizarro, co-founder and chief science officer at Feedzai. Welcome to The Laundry, Pedro. It's great to have you here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
And we got a lot to go into, but as one co-founder of a financial crime prevention company to another, what was your journey into this area? Like, I have my story, came into this like quite unexpectedly, but tell me, what got you into this?
So we really started going in 2011, and before that I was a professor at university doing my research, basically combining real-time streaming information with machine learning models. So I was basically realizing that this need to make decisions quickly and efficiently was common in many industries. So the ability to capture real-time information, compare it with like historical information, and then on top of that, to put models to make recommendations or decisions to help improve the system was, at least on the scientific side at the university, was really state of the art. It was starting to boom, and we realized that we were developing a system that was very ahead of the state of the art. And then we got passionate about using this new technology, combining this real-time streaming with state-of-the-art machine learning models in a domain that we believe is really important, right? And we were also approached by people in banks to use this technology for good. We found that was a perfect match, and we've been there ever since.
That's fascinating, and actually not too different from the Strise story as well, which originated as a research project at a university in Norway. And it wasn't initially intended for financial crime prevention, but through a collaboration with a bank in Norway who said, hey, I think this could be really efficient solving our KYB issues. And then we kind of used them as a design partner, and yeah, here we are. So interesting that that it's kind of similar background and ended up in this space. Indeed. But you guys started Feedzai in 2008, and you said you got really into it in 2011. And in those years, thinking about the topic for this episode, AI and financial crime prevention, lots have changed. So just to kind of start there, what did you think AI in this space would look like by now, and how it has the reality like surprised you or not surprised you?
So I think the biggest surprise is the difference between innovation and dissemination. So as founders and
And could you just define dissemination term in case somebody hasn't heard it before, any of the listeners who are just coming into the space?
Yes, good point. So dissemination is basically putting that new thing, that innovation, in use, right? It's the ability to making that innovation useful for someone, to make it used by people and used in a way that actually works. And that is actually much harder than what it seems, because it's not only having a good model, it's putting the model in production and having it in an environment that makes sense, the case manager or the rules editor or all the engine and the surrounding software and surrounding environment must work, and the people must be trained. And every little change, there's always some sort of resistance. People resist a lot, passively or actively, to change. So dissemination is for sure the biggest surprise for me, the fact that it's so much slower than innovation.
Good point. And I think also, I'm guessing you as well come from like an engineering background, and you know, you have that like, oh, it's great, we build it, why don't we just use it right away? And you just think that it's just the next logical step. But I guess that is where you could have built a perfect system, but if it isn't in use, it doesn't really matter, right?
That's right. So I even have a saying that all of these innovations go through 3 different stages. The first one is active resistance. The second one is passive resistance. Right? The difference is active resistance, someone is really blocking you. In passive resistance, they are not blocking you, but they are also not helping. Yeah, you do your stuff. And then normally we jump into something quite different, which is frantic desire. So people go from resistance to desire very quickly. There's like a sudden shift normally. Maybe sometimes the fear of missing out, or they see that competitors are doing something that they are not doing. So normally there's this quite big shift where people are resisting something, and then suddenly maybe it doesn't appear that nothing changed, but suddenly they want it for yesterday.
And in the industry today, among AML, financial crime prevention personnel who are now actively buying software like technology solutions, where would you say that people are? Is it in terms of AI, is it active resistance, passive resistance, or are it like the frantic desire?
Yes, I think many buyers, decision makers are still in some sort of passive resistance. And of course, some are already in, they see the potential of AI and ability to improve systems and efficiency. And some are already in a frantic desire stage, but I think many are still with some sort of resistance in the AML stage, that's for sure.
I think that one group that is in the frantic desire stage, that when it comes to AI in financial crime, that is the criminals themselves. I think they are all in and using this to the best of their ability. So, I mean, you sit deeply into the fraud space of fin crime prevention. So how do you see AI being weaponized by criminal, and how fast is it evolving? Like, do you have any examples or data points that you've been seeing lately that is scaring and worrying to you?
Yes. So, as you say, criminals are very tech savvy and very eager to explore new tools and new technologies, because they know that many times in that small advantage is the gap they want to exploit. So they are using novelty sometimes to get people in some sort of surprise, to trick them somehow. So they know that they have to be quick to take advantage of that. So they will explore all types of, for example, AI to generate synthetic emails, synthetic messages, things that look like you. For example, maybe 2-3 years ago, everybody would say, oh, if you get a message well, check for typos or for odd words that kind of don't make sense in your language, right? For example, we would
That's
get
now it's perfect emails now, right? It's not longer the Nigerian prince emails where you could see that this was that it was something different. So, but is there any kind of like is there any specific fraud examples that you've seen lately where you thought, oh wow, they
yeah.
really got that novelty angle right?
Yeah. So I think right now it's very common for to have custom attacks, right? So it's not a generic message, but a custom attack, for example, that they know that you belong to a certain company and that your colleagues are this and that, and you report to this person. So they would check these over LinkedIn and other social networks, so they can create a map of your business connections, and they would send message emails to you that look like they could be written from this person, right? So the typical CEO message that the CEO wants you to buy some gift cards, for example. So we've seen lots of these emails that they look very similar to the type of writing of the CEO. We even saw situations where they are creating synthetic voice of our own CEO, for example. And I mean, I know Nunu very well, the CEO very well, from like more than 20 years. And I myself was not fooled by the voice, but other people were fooled by the voice. So it is good enough that you can really make targeted attacks in terms of the connections, the type of writing, the image, the voice. So these things are getting really personalized.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's something to watch out for as well. Like I've had employees at Strise who also get like emails from me. But then luckily, like since all the communication is on Slack, I rarely would send an email to an employee. That should be like the first sign. But of course a lot of companies do send email internally as well. But
But
it's really
we already got them also on WhatsApp. So
Oh yeah.
so which is something that would be normal
Yeah,
communication.
true. That
So
is true. So that's also but if we think that okay, criminals, they are in frantic desire using it to the best of their ability, always trying to create this novelty angle, trying to defraud people. But do you think then that we are ever capable of like leapfrogging the bad actors? Or do you think this space will always be more like reactive than proactive? Just because, I mean, it's compliance. It is a little bit skeptic of nature. So what do you see in the future? Will we leapfrog or will we be a bit behind?
So I think there are some companies that by nature they are a little bit more reactive, but we also see in, for example, new neobanks and other type of startups in fintech that they are more proactive and they would start initiatives on purpose to prevent or to stop or to detect some types of crimes. For example, use some sort of data sharing across partners to prevent, because something that fraudsters do, and they take advantage of this, is that they know that much of the market is segmented, right? The issuer sees things from a perspective, the acquiring sees things from another perspective, the network sees other things, the telco company sees other things, and all of these companies many times are in different countries and jurisdictions. So many times they take advantage of the fact that things are disconnected and they will attack things here, they attack things there. But some companies are already taking advantage of that and building ways to share information and to automate, for example, models instead of just waiting for them to degrade over time, to just automate retraining. So I think some companies, and we are one of those, are proactively doing many things ahead of the fraudsters.
So we've talked about what's happening at the frontier of AI. Now let's look at the human side of the equation, the skepticism, the active and passive resistance, the ethics, and how we move the industry forward. Pedro, I really want to dig a bit deeper into this passive resistance, and the frantic desire. So
Sure.
just from, like, if we talk about this skepticism, from your perspective, where does the industry skepticism come from around AI solutions? I mean, for me, I think it is. I've spoken to so many in the industry, and everyone's like, yeah, sure, great with AI, but come on, I just want to be able to configure which sanctions list I screen against, or like, oh, I wish I could remove these false positive hits in a blink of an eye instead of 16 clicks and 2 hours of documentation. You know, it's like, oh, bring on the AI, but can we solve the things that should already be solved first in clunky software solutions? So that's my perspective, but what's yours?
For sure. So that goes right to the point I was saying before about the difference between innovation and dissemination, right? Dissemination is really putting the innovation to work and to work well. And that many times is really the difficult part. For example, in our case, I say that our models are doing a pretty good job, but the difficulty is actually, for example, to have an entire system that is working 24/7 in a really high demand environment with very low latencies, very high throughputs, a very secure system. So it's not really just having the model, it's having all the surrounding things around the model that allow the model to do good work, but you need to do so many other things. So I can tell you that when we first started Feedzai, I didn't think that we were going to have to build so many pieces. We ended up creating a rules engine, a streaming engine, a case manager, right? All of those things, they already existed. There were case managers before we did. There were streaming engines, there were rule engines. And initially we were just developing like the core part, the core models. But we realized that, as you were saying, there were clunky things. They couldn't quite connect very well with the rules engines on the client, or they could not quite connect very well with a case manager or with a message queue or with a streaming engine, or even with an interface showing some statistics. So we ended up building another module and another module and another module just to have everything working.
Actually, that's so relatable. Things. It's so relatable for us too. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, you think you have it. You're like, oh, no, we need this thing as well, and this thing, and this thing. And then you realize, oh, yeah, and this, because it is what you say, like putting it to use and in a production environment just requires a lot. It's not about if you get one thing right, it's not enough. You need the kind of infrastructure around it to make it work properly. So then for those who are still in active skepticism, passive skepticism or resistance, do you think then some of this is justified?
Well, I think it's clearly justified, right? Sometimes when we say bleeding edge, the focus is on the bleeding part, right? It's sometimes there's the so-called first mover advantage, but many times, especially in these domains, there's the second mover advantage, because the first one gets burned, right? So I think many times, and companies that are concerned about compliance and risk, many times they say, okay, let's see what happens to the first group of people trying this fancy technology, because we know that some of them are going to get burned. And we talk with many clients that the very first question that they ask is, okay, but who else is using this, right?
Yeah.
So they want on purpose, right? This is interesting. They want on purpose not to be the first. They want to be the second or the third, because they want to have the safety of someone done it before and survive to tell the story, and then they will catch up.
That's true. So let's say we are role playing now. I am a chief compliance officer or head of fraud, or the type of persona that you guys are targeting. What is it? How do you make the ongoing case for AI to a person like that who has been burned by earlier systems that produced, thousands of false positives or weren't effective or, have had flaws in it?
Well, I think first of all, you really need to acknowledge and respect those concerns, because I think they are very real. So you cannot just dismiss it and say that technology is magic and is going to solve everything. You need to understand the problem, in this case of false positives or compliance risks. And you also need to not overhype things. Customers, of course, they are smart and they will understand if you're overhyping, and that doesn't work, right? So I think we need to be very consistent about the promises that we make and also then delivery on those promises. And many times we end up gaining clients by word of mouth. So we do good work on one client, and then we have like the next client, oh, you're afraid of this? Go talk with this other team that they also did the transition from no AI to AI, or from another product to our product. So many times our best salespeople are our clients, because we really were with them for the difficult periods of transition when they were making these big decisions, and we respect that. And these things, when they work well, they work for both of them, for the old client, the new client, and of course also for us. So they show that this is not just some overhyped thing, it's something that really works. So I think that's the most important thing, is the ability to build this trustworthy relationship with clients for a long term, right? We are here for the long game. I remember a client when we were really small and we're trying to deploy, and the client said, well, maybe not in these words, but using strong words, say, "Oh, this is all bullshit. You're trying to fool me. This is not going to work." And I was telling them, "Look, we are a small company." That was 10 years ago. We are a small company. It only makes sense for us to sell this to you if it is a great success for you. You are one of the biggest payment processors. It only makes sense for us if this is such a huge success for you that we can then invite you to go to meetings and to other clients. So we are even more motivated than you to have this work, because for us this is really a moment to become a banner situation for us. And many times we have to change the conversation with them to show them that no, we are here to work on like very long term. For us, this is not a sell and leave kind of situation. This is going to sell, and we are going to stick with you for years and years and years. And in this specific client, we are actually been in production with them non-stop for 12 years. It will be 12 years in June. So we were really for the long end. And I think when you talk about those situations, about sticking during the hard times, which there will always be hard times, right? When you're doing something as core and deep as doing fraud detection, like in the core systems of a bank, there will always be situations. But if we stick with the client, then it pays off.
What role, if we think about one thing is the compliance officers, one thing is the financial crime prevention professionals, but what role do you think regulators play in this in the AI adoption? Are they a brake on innovation, or are they starting to become a driver of it? What's your take on this? What do you see?
Well, that's a great question. I think there are good regulators and not so good regulators. And what I see is that in the good types of regulation, they demand something on one hand, but they also simplify something on the other hand. For example, in Brazil, the regulator some years ago, it's well known, right? They forced all the banks to they had to allow real-time payments person to person, right? Which ended up creating the Pix system in Brazil, which is now the most successful payment, real-time payment in the world, with like 75 or 80% of people using Pix every day. So the regulator forced the banks, and they say, either you do this or you don't have a banking license, right? This is a very strong imposing rule. But on the other hand, they said, but now the criteria for you to open a bank, because maybe your bank is doing more small types of transactions, going to the store, to the football stadium, to small type of payments person to person, it's maybe if you focus on that, maybe you don't have those big liabilities of loans to buy a house or to buy a car. So they decreased quite a lot the amount of money that banks had to have, and that created a huge number of new banks in Brazil and bank spin-offs in Brazil, new types of banks, and created a huge economy. So on one hand, they enforced something, but on the other hand, they gave back something to the community, allowing more innovation and more development. And I think that's a good example of what regulators should do. Every time they should enforce something, they should make something else easier.
Yeah, that's a good rule of thumb. If you think about innovation in regulation, do you think that the regulators will move the fines from the banks to the software providers for AML failures, or not move them entirely, but put fines on the software vendors as well?
I'm almost certain that they will move beyond banking. Not sure if it's going to be software providers or telecommunications company or social networks, but I'm pretty sure that they will move the fines beyond banking, because that's what makes sense on one hand, and also because some geographies like Australia and others are already doing that, and it's proving to be working, right? And it makes sense. If, for example, a scam attack starts on a social network and then it gets forwarded thousands of times or millions of times over the social network, and maybe also using a telco, using SMSs or WhatsApp or something, and then eventually gets to the bank, why should the bank be the sole responsible, right?
I totally agree.
There are like two companies in between, and many of those companies could make even a faster decision because they see these messages being repeated like thousands of times per day. So surely they are suspicious.
Yeah, we've also made, like, if you covered also the controversy around Meta and how much of their revenues actually are from promoting fraudulent advertisements on their platforms. And also there are someone who estimates that it could be as much as 10%. So I'm thinking, okay, they should also take more responsibility for keeping the fraudsters out. So I agree with you, definitely agree with you. Also, telco, who sends out a lot of the text messages that people fall from. So yeah, I agree. But if we just also look to the future with AI and how AI will be adopted, if you were to kind of look 2-3 years into the future, what do you think a FinCrime team of tomorrow look like?
So what we should realize is that the cost of AI is decreasing like nothing else in history has decreased before, right? We are used to the cost of storage and the cost of CPUs to decrease year on year. And even Moore's law said that the power of CPUs was doubling like every 2 years or 3 years, something like that. But now what we are seeing is something much, much bigger. These models, the token cost, for example, of calling LLMs is decreasing something between 10 times to 100 times per year, right? So there was nothing like this in the history of technology ever. Nothing decreased so quickly, so much for so many years. And I think what that means is that AI will be basically everywhere. I normally say, where there's money, there's fraud. But now I also say, where there's a decision, there is AI. So every place there will be a decision, there will be AI. For example, you see it these days, right? Even on a car, you see the windshield. It's a tiny decision. Put the windshield on or not. Is it raining or not? And it's automated, right? steering the wheels, right? Stopping. All of those automations, they have little AI models inside the car to make that. And I think the same is going to happen in all sorts of things related with financial crime. Is the models, it's the case manager, is writing the SARs, is automating the new models, creating rules, is eliminating false alarms. It's going to change from line 1 to line 2 in the queues. So every little thing, so it's not just detecting fraud or KYC, it's every little thing in the teams. Every time there's a decision or recommendation, there will be models. So right now, for example, we go to a client and we have like two or three models in a client. I see that in the future, we're going to have hundreds of models per client for all of these little things doing automation of all the tasks.
Yeah, I think definitely helping with that. I agree. And also, I'm just wondering how far into the future we'll get before AI kind of makes the decision without any kind of, or I mean, some decision it can already make, but but people are still a bit skeptic. The compliance risk, since the regulators aren't fully there, you still kind of need sometime a human to be like, okay, we did look at it, even though AI presented you kind of, and everything, still the human in the loop to be like, yes, it was a human who kind of made this decision. So it's not just fully automated, but it will be interesting to see like how fast, how far this decisioning will go. And also it's different in different areas of financial crime prevention, right? Closing down or, freezing a transaction because you think it's fraudulent, that could be looked at by a human later and reversed versus like, okay, let's close an account and kick a person out. You know what I mean? It's a scale of what decisions as well, and if it's and how important it is.
Indeed, and maybe if I can add just a small thing about the human in the loop. So having the human in the loop is important, but it's not enough. And I can tell you that in our experiments, we've seen that sometimes the human in the loop just stops thinking critically. It gets so used to the model doing the recommendation that it just doesn't think anymore.
Yeah.
So it's it's a good explanation, or the score is high, so let's block the card. So sometimes you need to really be proactive in providing some sort of context and justification, and force the human to be a little bit more thorough in their investigation, because it is easy to just start to have what sometimes is called automation bias. You just say, oh, it's computer said so I'm fine with that.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I agree. It reminds me of this like a British comedy show I watched when I was young, and it was just like, computer says no, but now it would be like, computer just says yes, and I'm okay with it too. Let's just let it go through. Or we are nearing the end of the show. I have one final question before we move into the quick fire questions, and that is kind of what we touched upon a little bit now. There's like a scale of decisions that AI should take. Where should humans be involved? Where shouldn't it? And that is also a bit, if you look at how AI is being used today in financial crime prevention, are there any ethical lines that you think about when you guys are building and developing Feedzai?
Oh, yes, for sure. So you probably know that we have a big responsible AI group, and we've been working in responsible AI since 2016, so 10 years. So we, for example, created our bias audits, also create Fair GBM and Fairband, which are algorithms to train models with fairness. So we are very concerned also about transparency and creating explanations at scale that work, and we are always tweaking to see if the explanations are really useful for analysts. So I think for sure there are many things related with fairness, transparency, and ethics that are important, especially because these systems, the banking systems, they are a human right, the right to have access to financial systems and money and loans and all of these services. So we cannot make big mistakes by gender or by age or by location or by social economic status. So I think it's very important to constantly measure if the models are biased or not, and if they are explainable or not.
Yeah, I agree. I agree, and this is of course, I guess, part of these things that you talked about now is also a bit why people are maybe stuck in the bit like passive resistance or passive skepticism, because you don't really know how it would turn out, and since AI will be involved in important decisions. But yeah, all right. Before we end this episode, we're going to dish out some quick fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay. What's the most overhyped AI trend right now?
I think it is clearly AI agents, although there's lots of potential. And as I said, cost of intelligence is going down. Right now, it's not yet the case, as some people say, that AI agents are already replacing entire departments or even entire companies. There's lots of potential, but they are still, I think, overhyped.
What's the most underhyped capability that you think deserves far more attention?
Well, it's also related with agents. So I think they are overhyped on one hand and underhyped on another. And I think one of these parts is the authentication and intention of agents, right? If we want to automate these agents, we should be able to pass our IV to them somehow and have a way to limit that, okay, this agent is authorized on my behalf to make purchase up to this amount, up to these hours or days, right? Right now, we don't have a really good authentication and verification of ID of the agent and the intention of the agent, even when they kind of misfire. And the other, I think, underhyped part is perpetual KYC. So right now, AI is good enough that we can basically do KYC permanently for every transaction. We should be able to do KYC.
What does financial crime prevention look like in 10 years? Optimistic, short answers only.
Well, as I said, I believe that we are going to have hundreds of models per client optimizing every little thing: fraud detection, anti-money laundering, rule creation, writing SARs, adjusting rules, tuning models, managing the queues. So all of these little tasks. So instead of having like one big model, we're going to have hundreds of models automating. Think, for example, a factory 100 years ago, which was basically still like a processing line, very automated, but still with maybe dozens or hundreds or even thousands of people in the factory. With a factory now that is full of robots and is completely automated, very clean, very sophisticated. And I think that's what's going to happen also in fin crime detection, with AI automating lots and lots of steps. So it's like a basically new factory compared with old factories.
That brings this spin of the laundry to an end. Pedro, thank you so much for joining me. If any of our listeners want to continue the conversation with you, where can people find and connect with you?
Well, you can find me on feedzai.com or on LinkedIn.
Encourage everyone to go and connect with Pedro. And thanks to everyone who tuned in for this half an hour and spent it with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, check out the back catalog of more than 150 episodes. It's any topic within financial crime prevention. We've covered it. Go look for the topic and theme that interests you. Please also follow The Laundry on your podcast platform of choice. Share it on your social media, in a group chat, or with your team. Give us a 5-star rating if you think we deserve it. Got something you want to share? Email us at laundry@strise.ai. Your host for this episode was me, Marit. Producer was Matthew. Editor Dominic. Videographer was Lois. And Laundry is proudly produced by Strise. Visit strise.ai for more information. See you next time.